I went downstairs hoping that everyone in the house was asleep. I was trying not to make any noise. I was already at the front door when the light in the hallway turned on, and I saw my grandfather's displeased face, and I realized I was in trouble. Hi, my name's Brooke, and I'm the most miserable girl in the world, and that's because my grandfather is a billionaire. No, I'm not kidding. It's just, even wealth, luxury, and all this beautiful stuff have their downside. You want to know something about it? Then make sure to watch this video to the end and don't forget to like it. Well, as you may guess, I was born in an unusual family. My grandpa is one of the richest men in our country. He owns a huge network of hotels around the world. You can even find his name in the Forbes list. Of course, he has a reason for it. He started in the hotel business from the very bottom. He was a regular porter guy who was able to build a real hotel empire of his own. He used to work as a receptionist, a manager, then a hotel president. When he realized how this business worked from the inside, he opened his first hotel. His hotel quickly gained a good reputation. My grandpa's business slogan is, "The customer is always right." So he tried his best to make every guest stay at the hotel just perfect, and he did it. After 5 years, my grandpa opened several other hotels. He increased the staff and established the operation processes in his network. Anyway, my grandpa is a hardworking, responsible, and just great person. I realized how cool my grandpa was only when I got older. When I was a kid, I was offended my beloved grandpa spent so little time with me. My parents kept telling me he was busy, they couldn't distract him, I couldn't break into his office, and so on. Since I was a kid, I remember my grandpa as a very serious and even harsh person. I rarely saw him smile, and if he did, I'd only see it at some high society parties, where such a smile was more like a duty than a feeling. Personally, I didn't like these parties at all. I was always bored there. My parents and my grandparents were busy talking with some serious and rich people, and I was just there with them, hanging around, pretending to be very happy to see everyone, even if each stranger felt it his duty to squeeze my cheeks. Our whole family lived in a huge mansion located on the outskirts of the city. It was quiet and peaceful. I didn't go to kindergarten. I was brought up by a nanny and several tutors who lived with us. I learned foreign languages, etiquette, equestrian sports, tennis, music. I didn't have a single free minute just to play dolls like all girls do. My grandpa insisted I learn in my childhood what I will definitely need in the future. After all, such a perfect businessman can't have a stupid granddaughter. My parents never argued with him, believing he was always right about my upbringing. Sometimes they allowed me to go to the city with my nanny. We went to the water park, entertainment center, cinema, game room. I didn't have any friends, so I usually didn't spend a lot of time in the city. It wasn't interesting to play and have fun alone. Once during such a trip to the city, a terrible thing happened. The nanny left me in the playroom as usual, and she went to the store to buy some water for me. I was playing in a pool with plastic balls when suddenly an unknown woman approached me. She introduced herself and said our driver had called my nanny and asked her to go down to the parking lot. She didn't have time to get me herself, so she asked the woman in the store to help her. The woman looked friendly, and she was also pretty. So I cheerfully nodded at her, took her hand, and we went out to the parking lot. Along the way, she told me she had lovely puppies at home, and if I wanted, I could go visit her and meet them. She assured me my nanny definitely wouldn't mind. When we got down to the parking lot, we didn't go to our car with a cheerful driver, Robert, but to some other car, driven by a scowling guy with a scar on his cheek. I was afraid of him, so I didn't want to get in the car and pulled my hand out of the stranger's. Her cute face immediately turned angry, and she started to try to put me into the car by force. But a security guard came running at my screams. So the stranger threw me aside and immediately jumped into the car and drove away. I started crying, asked for my mom and dad and nanny, and gave him my first and last name. When he heard my name, he was very surprised. Then he called somewhere, and after 10 minutes, my dad and grandpa came to pick me up. I told them what had happened. and saw their faces change, but they didn't tell me anything. In the evening, when I was in bed, my mom confessed that everything that had happened that day was an attempt to kidnap me for ransom, as my grandpa was a very rich and powerful man. Since then, my life has changed a lot. My nanny was fired. I loved her very much, and I was crying. Instead, they hired a rough and serious woman, and I had a personal bodyguard. He was a huge, scowling, 6-foot man. I was even afraid of him, even though I knew he would do anything bad to me. I was forbidden to leave the mansion, even though I went to the movies and entertainment centers. The bodyguard was with me 24/7. Even when I was asleep, another guard was watching me through monitors. Apparently, this incident scared my grandpa so much, he decided to make the most of my security. When it was time to go to school, I was sent to an elite private school for rich kids. Everyone had a bodyguard there, so no one was surprised seeing a huge rock following me everywhere. At 7 or 8, I was ready to accept everything in my life, but when I got older, I had some problems. I wasn't allowed to communicate with friends from my school during recess. I was never allowed to go out, even though all the girls my age went to each other's houses for sleepovers. My grandpa added some extra classes to my schedule so that I didn't even have time to think about going out and having fun. When I was 14, I liked a boy for the first time. Henry and I went to school together. I always noticed how he looked at me. I guess other girls didn't interest him. We met at a school party. He played in an orchestra there, and I watched him playing. I was very surprised. I didn't know he played music. So the next day, I went up to him to talk, and Henry told me he was seriously engaged in music, and his aunt was a music teacher at our school. So he somehow managed to study there, even though his parents weren't particularly rich. I really enjoyed talking to Henry, so I agreed on a date when he asked me out. Of course, the bodyguard, who still followed me everywhere, reported my every step to Grandpa, and my grandpa was against the date. He said Henry's family wasn't equal to ours, so there was no point in talking to this boy. Besides, my grandpa still didn't trust anyone, and he was suspicious of every new acquaintance. Of course, his words upset me, but they didn't stop me. I had arranged with Henry that we would meet in the evening when everyone in our house would be asleep. I would sneak out the back door that led to the garden and then get out of the mansion. Apparently, I really had no idea how much my grandpa cared about our safety, because as soon as I went out into the garden in the evening, several guards immediately ran up to me and asked me if I needed some help. It was a real failure. My grandpa broke my date with a guy I was dreaming of with his obsessive-compulsive and hyper-protective behavior. And I decided, no matter what, I would get out of the house someday. Henry was sympathetic to me, even though he joked I looked like a princess who was sitting in a tower with a dragon and needed to be rescued. It actually was like this. I decided on my next attempt to escape from the tower a week later. This time, I planned to not go through the back door, but through the main entrance, telling the guards I had permission from my parents and Grandpa to go out. I went down the stairs, hoping that everyone in the house was asleep. I was trying not to make any noise. I was already at the front door when the light in the hallway turned on and I saw my grandfather's displeased face, and I realized I was in trouble. My grandfather scolded me for not thinking about my safety and for not appreciating his concern. He called me an irresponsible girl who runs on a date with the first person who asks her out, not thinking about the consequences. He said a lot of other hurtful things, but most important, he said from that day on, he would take my education seriously. My grandpa promised next year he would send me to study in Europe at a private college for girls. After I graduated from college, I'd marry the man he would choose for me, and I'd have no chance to refuse. I'd already let my grandpa down and failed him. That's what he told me. I burst into tears, ran to my room, and hoped my parents would bring my grandpa to reason. But the next morning, my mom only repeated his words, saying I had disappointed her and my dad. I couldn't believe my whole family was against me, and my life didn't belong to me anymore. But I'm not ready to put up with that. Anyway, now I'm making another escape plan. I want to leave my family forever, whose money is a heavy burden on me. I don't want to go to a private college. I don't want to marry a man I'd never love. But it's not so easy to do. So I want to ask you for some advice. What should I do in this situation? Should I accept my fate or dare to escape? Text your answers in the comments below. I really need your help. If you liked my story, click thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell button to not miss new videos and turn on notifications. Bye everyone. See ya.